In the previous video, I shared about the reciprocal tariff and why it is still relatively uncommon. This reciprocal tariff will be applied after Donald Trump's announcement on 2 April 2025, when he implements this tariff for all of the United States trading partners. After that video, some of you messaged me asking how the reciprocal tariff differs from other types of tariffs, such as import tariffs. Even my clients reached out and messaged me asking how this tariff is different from anti-dumping duties, for example. I think this is a common question that many of you are wondering about, so I want to make a video like this to answer this question for everyone who is still unclear about reciprocal tariffs. How is it different from other types of tariffs? What is its purpose? And it'll provide some real-life examples to make it easier for you to understand. Alright, please watch and follow along. We'll move on to today's presentation slides. Reciprocal tariff vs. other taxes. Other taxes come with different advantages, everyone. Now, let me show you a message from one of my clients where they asked me this question. Good day, got a question. How does Trump's decision on new tariffs affect a Panzer situation? I mean, you have this anti-dumping agreement. What does that mean? It means the client is asking me how Donald Trump's new tariff decision affects the situation with Ponga, which refers to Qatar, everyone specifically the situation in Ponga, as well as the seafood industry in Vietnam in particular. And the customer's point is that before Ponga was taxed for anti-dumping, NTNP was taxed for anti-dumping, and current customers are confused about this new tax rate, compared to the old anti-dumping duty rate. So, after that, I explained to the client very clearly that the reciprocal tariff, this new tariff, is out of scope. In other words, it does not fall within the scope of the anti-dumping duty. That means these are two different types of tariffs. And in the case where a Vietnamese business is already subject to anti-dumping duties, and then this reciprocal tariff is also applied, you will have to pay two types of tariffs. Now, it'll introduce the main types of tariffs in international trade that you often encounter. These include the import tariff, which is the most important type. This is the import tax. Protective tariff, the anti-dumping duty. And finally, the reciprocal tariff that I mentioned in the previous video. Alright, next, it'll present a very straightforward comparison table. It's a concise and clear table to compare these four types of tariffs. This will help you easily visualize and understand and distinguish between these four types of tariffs. Since I want to compare the reciprocal tariff with the other types, it'll put the reciprocal tariff first in the table. Reciprocal tariff, well, compare them based on how they work and the purpose of each type of tariff. And finally, it'll give a real-life example. Alright, for the reciprocal tariff, the way it works is that tariffs are imposed to respond to situations where other countries place high tariffs on a nation. For example, let's say right now the US believes that other countries are imposing tariffs on goods exported from the US into other countries at a high rate. They feel that this is unfair and want to apply a reciprocal tariff in return on those products. So, when products are exported from their trading partners into the US, this is called a reciprocal tariff. So, what about the case of an import tariff? An import tariff is a tax applied to all goods imported into a country. It's not based on the idea of imposing a high tariff in response to high-priced goods. Instead, an import tariff is a tax rate applied to all imported goods entering a country. And the third type is protective tariffs. On the other hand, is different. It involves imposing high tariffs to protect domestic businesses from foreign competition. This is one of the types of tariffs known as protective tariffs. The goal is to safeguard the domestic industry and protect local businesses within the country. Because if foreign companies export their products into the country at extremely low costs, domestic businesses will not be able to survive. That's why they want to raise this tariff to a high level, known as a protective tariff, to shield the domestic industry. The final type of tariff is anti-dumping tariff or anti-dumping tax. The anti-dumping tax is applied in cases where goods are sold at prices lower than the cost. of selling them in the domestic market of that country or lower than the cost of producing those goods. This is what is called the anti-dumping tax. Each type of tariff serves a different function, everyone. At the same time, each type of tariff has its own specific purpose. For example, the reciprocal tariff is designed to ensure fair trade according to the principle of reciprocity. That means if you impose high tariffs on me, I will impose high tariffs on you in return. That's why currently Vietnam and even some other countries around the world, such as Cambodia or other East Asian countries, are sending letters to the US government to negotiate and propose, showing their willingness to lower tariff rates, or even eliminate them entirely in order to reach an agreement and negotiate with the US government to limit or postpone the implementation of these countervailing duties. This is one of the foreign policies of the country, aiming to ensure that the national economy is not overly affected. Now, regarding import tariffs, their main purpose here is to generate revenue for the government, to create government revenue, and the government will use these import tariffs, these import taxes, to cover government expenses. For example, public service sectors, multi-level roads, construction, and so on. So the government uses these import tariffs to cover government expenses, to pay for services for the people, for example. As for the protective tariffs, its main purpose is to protect domestic manufacturing industries. And finally, there is the anti-dumping tariff, which is, of course, meant to prevent dumping practices. Dumping here refers to selling goods at very low prices. Now, let's look at some real-life examples for each type of tariff. For example, as mentioned before, I gave an example of the US imposing a 20% tariff on EU goods after the EU imposed high tariffs on US cars. For import tariffs, most countries have specific rates. For example, Vietnam imposes a 15% tariff on cars from Thailand. This is done to generate revenue for the Vietnamese government. As for protective tariffs, for example, protective tariffs, Vietnam currently imposes a tariff on imported chicken from the US to protect the domestic chicken industry. And finally, there is the term tariff, which refers to anti-dumping duties. Countries that sell goods at prices lower than their production costs or sell at prices lower than their domestic market prices will be subject to this tariff. Previously, the US imposed anti-dumping duties on Vietnamese catfish. And the tariff rate was very high. After being subjected to such high tariffs, Vietnamese businesses filed a lawsuit, and currently, some companies have had their tariffs reduced to zero. However, there are still some businesses facing high tariffs, but this tariff rate is reviewed every year, everyone. Anti-dumping duties is applied to individual companies, not to the entire country. Meanwhile, the other 1, 2, 3 tariff rates above are applied to the whole country, not just to specific businesses. I hope that this information will be helpful to all of you. And if you find this video helpful and informative, please feel free to hit the subscribe button for the channel, as well as share it with others in your export-import community so everyone can watch it together. Finally, thank you all for taking the time to watch, and I look forward to seeing you in the next videos.